Hey, I'm Becky. I'm a variety streamer, dog mom, and artist. I'm not really known for making videos like this. To be fair, I'm not known for making videos, nor am I really known anyway, but here I am. I'm gonna try something new today. I love art. I love character design. I love talking about it. It's been something I'm very passionate about my whole life, I would say. It's a field that if I got to choose to work within, I would. It's hard though, I don't know how to do it. I'll figure it out maybe, who knows. But character design is a great tool to be able to communicate to the viewer or the player who a character is without them having to say it using either, like a text bubble or speech. It can be used to fool you into thinking you know who this character is and that maybe they're a good guy when they're actually a bad guy, or the complete opposite. Take Spot from Across the Spider-Verse. He starts out by looking really silly because his character is presented as really silly. His powers are spots, he doesn't really know how to fight, he looks wonky and uncomfortable, but he turns evil quite quickly and quite powerful quite quickly. And what comes along with that development as a villain and as a character? Ding ding ding! You guessed it, it's his design. If you didn't guess his design, I feel like I set it up for you. Before I start, I want to say that I'm not a character designer. I've never worked within any field of designing characters or environments or anything like that for video games or movies or shows. I just find it really interesting and I do a little bit of research on it myself. Does that mean that everything I say is factually correct? No. It is my own interpretations of these characters and what certain traits they have represent in their character story and for them as either a person or not a person. All of the characters are, not humans, so I don't know if I can call them people, I guess. And that's why this video is divided into 3 parts. I'm starting with the backstory so we can understand who this character is. Then I'm going into my own personal interpretation of the design. And then what I could find out about design from the creative team that worked on it and the developers or producers that, set the tone for the designs. This video is very focused on just that connection between the story of a character and how that story is visually represented for them. My first test subject for this video is very fitting. It's Glados from the Portal series. One, in my opinion, of the greatest villains of all time. Recently, I've also been watching a bunch of video essays that both motivated me to make this video and gave me a better understanding of the Portal universe and Glados' character. So I will be linking those videos in my description because I just think you should check them out. They're fantastic. They helped inspire this video. I didn't reference them directly, but they absolutely had an influence on what I'm writing. So I feel like they deserve proper credit for just being fantastic creators that created fantastic videos. All my sources are going to be linked in the bio if you want to give them a closer look. I'd recommend to do so because there's a lot of really interesting interviews there discussing more than just character design. There's some interviews discussing just the production of the game, which was really fun to watch. So go check them out. Now to the backstory. Glados is a cold, calculated, and sarcastic AI controlling all of Aperture Science during the events of Portal 1 and part of Portal 2. She's introduced to us, the player, as a voice, just teaching us the basic mechanics of the game. And the further into the game we get, the more human she becomes. And we start getting this feeling that something isn't right. It seems like she doesn't have our best interest in mind. Something that's solidified when she sends us into a fiery death with the promise of cake. The cake was a lie, by the way. She did not give us cake. I want to make that clear. If you're planning on playing the Portal game, do not play it just because of the cake. There's no cake. Since this isn't a full Portal timeline, I won't be explaining the bigger narrative or go into depth about other characters in the game or the Lab Rat comic unless I need it for context. I'll be talking about parts that are relevant to her backstory specifically and how she develops as a character in the game. So the backstory will be told in chronological order compared to how it unfolded in the games and in the comic. Also, there are some contradictions, like, overall in the lore. So this is just how I interpret the timeline according to the playthroughs that I've done and the research that I've done after. It's entirely possible that they're not 100% correct or that I've missed something or interpreted something in the wrong way. But if that's the case, I only have one thing to say. Nuh-uh. If you don't want major spoilers, I'll put a timestamp when the backstory's over, but like the whole video is pretty much a big spoiler, so I just want you to keep that in mind. It's about character design. The story's it's kind of connected. So let's get into it. The whole story starts with another character. I'm not gonna go into super huge detail about him, but I will have to go into some detail about him just because his character is closely tied to Glados. So I kind of have to. Cave Johnson is the creator of Aperture Science, the place where Portal 1 and Portal 2 is played out. He started out as a shower curtain salesman and founded Aperture Fixtures, a company that was made to distribute and manufacture shower curtains. It was later changed into Aperture Science Innovators. And this name wasn't the only thing that changed, because the focus soon shifted from shower curtains to actual science. In 1944, Cave Johnson purchased a salt mine in Upper Michigan. This mine would be turned into the first Aperture Science facility. Here, Johnson, along with the scientists, conducted experiments in space, developed repulsion gels, and started developing the first rendition of the portal gun. By Cave Johnson's side was his loyal and dedicated assistant, Caroline. Cave Johnson refers to Caroline as the backbone of the facility in one of the voice messages played during Portal 2.
That eager voice you heard is the lovely Carolyn, my assistant. Rest assured, she has transferred your honorarium to the charitable organization of your choice. Isn't that right, Carolyn?
Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson.
She's the backbone of this facility. Pretty as a postcard, too. Sorry, fellas. She's married. To science.
In other voice messages, we get to hear her eagerly responding to him when he gives commands and really showing her dedication and loyalty to him. Aperture Science started as a well-respected company within the science and military field, even using astronauts and war heroes for their testing. But after some astronauts went missing during testing, it started going downhill. After a few years, research into moon rocks started. And through these experiments, Cave Johnson contracted something called moon rock poisoning. And he was dying.
The bean counters told me we literally could not afford to buy $7 worth of moon rocks, much less 70 million. Bought them anyway. Ground them up, mixed them into a gel. And guess what? Ground up moon rocks are pure poison. I am deathly ill. Still, it turns out they're a great portal conductor. So now, we're going to see if jumping in and out of these new portals can somehow leach the lunar poison out of a man's bloodstream. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Let's all stay positive and do some science. That said, I would really appreciate it if you could test as fast as possible. Carolyn, please bring me more pain pills.
Despite this, Caroline stayed by his side. Research started being made into putting Cave Johnson's consciousness into an AI before he died. But knowing that he might be dead before this research even sees the light of day, he records another voice message, naming Caroline as his successor, and even suggesting that her consciousness can be put into his machine.
The point is, if we can store music on a compact disc, why can't we store a man's intelligence and personality on one? So I have the engineers figuring that out now. Brain mapping, artificial intelligence. We should have been working on it 30 years ago. I will say this, and I'm gonna say it on tape so everybody hears it 100 times a day. If I die before you people can pour me into a computer, I want Carolyn to run this place. Now she'll argue. She'll say she can't. She's modest like that, but you make her. Hell, put her in my computer. I don't care. All right, test's over. You can head on back to your desk.
In this message, he implies that this might not be something that she wants. He also pushes his employees to make her if she says no. Spoiler! He fucking dies. So we don't actually know this part of the story, if Caroline was forced to put her consciousness into the Glados machine or not. Cave Johnson's message implies that it's not what she wants, but that's all we can go off of. There are deleted voice lines of Caroline saying that this isn't something she wants, but they're not canon. We can't take a deleted voice line and go, this is what actually happens in the game. It could be a situation where it was just too obvious to have it in and they'd rather do implication, but there could also be a situation where Caroline might have been excited about this. So it is implied that it's not something she wants, but we don't know 100% for sure how she reacted to this situation. We also don't know if human Caroline was killed during the process of putting her consciousness into Glados, or if they both coexisted for a while, that there was a robot with your consciousness that's a copy of your consciousness while you're walking around kind of deal. Way too complicated way to put that, but interesting to think about. The scientists work endlessly to be able to finish this Glados machine, and they finally get to turn it on. But this machine is nothing like Caroline. She's not the sweet assistant she once was. And after being turned on, she wastes no time and immediately tries to kill all the scientists. And according to the Lab Rat comic, which shows some events before even Portal 1 and some time between Portal 1 and 2, the scientists keep having to use a kill switch to turn off Glados, which means that they don't even do like a slow turn off, they do like a immediate system shutdown because she keeps trying to kill them every single time she wakes up. So they start developing personality cores intended to give her a conscience so she won't want to kill them. And on Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, turning on Glados becomes a main event. Now that she has her new personality cores, it shouldn't be an issue. It was absolutely an issue. She immediately becomes hostile and starts killing a bunch of people in the facility. The surviving scientists start working on and installing a morality core in order to stop her from trying to kill everyone. And when they turn it on with this new morality core installed, it does seem to work. And she says that she has no interest in killing, she only craves science. And she'd like to conduct an experiment, specifically on Bring Your Cat to Work Day. And the only thing she needs is a little neurotoxin, likely replicating the Schrodinger's cat experiment. And the scientists, they all say yes, because it's all for science, of course. You have an evil AI that's tried to kill everyone multiple times, that asks for just a little bit of neurotoxin and you give it to her. You kind of have yourself to blame then. So of course she locks down the facility and uses the neurotoxin to force everyone into testing, because that's what she was programmed to do. I kind of want to know how this conversation went down between Glados and the scientist. I know you get to see it, but I kind of want to know the aftermath of this. Glados, now that you turned on with your morality core, you gonna kill me? No? Why was there a pause? What did that mean? Why did you pause? Glados? Are you gonna try to kill us again? No. I do want to conduct an experiment though. Yeah, okay, you did that pause again. That freaks me out. Don't do that. But an experiment, great. Do you need anything for it? Yeah. Could I have, a little bit of neurotoxin? Are you gonna use it to kill me? No. Well, okay then. Well, here you go, take it. Have fun, go experiment. Now we come to the events of Portal 1. The main protagonist, Chell, is woken up, ready for testing. Glados acts as a guide in the beginning of the game, teaching the player and Chell the mechanics and how to get through the chambers. Kind of. Glados is of course tricking Chell into thinking that she's a helping hand, nothing more than an automated voice, guiding you through chambers that seem to get increasingly more dangerous. All with the promise of a reward after the last chamber. A cake. It wasn't a cake, it was a pit of fire. It was a pit of fire, it was not a cake. Compared to the other test subjects, Chell escapes this death trap and sends Glados into a panic, where she pleads with her to come back. She made a mistake. It wasn't supposed to be a pit of fire, it was supposed to be cake.
Okay, the test is over now. You win. Go back to the recovery annex for your cake. It was a fun test, and we're all impressed at how much you won. The test is over. Come back. Uh-oh, somebody cut the cake. I told them to wait for you, but they cut it anyway. There is still some left, if you hurry back.
She uses a lot of manipulative and guilt-tripping tactics here in order to trick Chell and inevitably the player to come back. But when she realizes they're not, this is where that facade starts cracking.
This is your fault. It didn't have to be like this. I'm not kidding now. Turn back or I will kill you. I'm going to kill you. And all the cake is gone. You don't even care, do you? This is your last chance.
She becomes mean and sarcastic and hell-bent on killing her. And eventually the player gets to meet Glados face to face. finally solidifying that Glados isn't human, crushing the little hope we had that there might be anyone else alive in this facility. Now there's no acts, no promise of cake, and definitely no humanity. Glados starts warming up her neurotoxin in order to kill Chell, who at the end of Portal 1 wins and successfully kills Glados and blows up part of the facility. And in the end of Portal 1, Chell is dragged back into the facility, setting up Portal 2. In the beginning of Portal 2, Chell wakes up after an unspecified amount of time and tries to escape the facility with the help of Wheatley, another bot. They find Glados' dead body, machine, corpse, wherever's left, laying lifeless on the ground, until she's accidentally turned back on. Before dying, Glados has backed up her consciousness, and she has this sort of black box where over and over throughout her dead state, she was re-experiencing dying. And now she's faced with a woman who killed her, and she's not happy about it. Chell is immediately put back into testing, and Glados is the funniest she's ever been. She spends the whole time roasting the absolute shit out of Chell. And this time she doesn't need to pretend to be nice or helpful. She can just make fun of you while you're trying to figure out these test chambers. I'm gonna show some clips of my favorite lines of this, because it's not relevant to her character design, but it's so funny.
Sorry about the mess. I've really let the place go since you killed me. By the way, thanks for that.
Sarcasm self-test complete.
Oh good, that's back online. Well done. Here come the test results. You are a horrible person. That's what it says. A horrible person. We weren't even testing for that. Don't let that horrible person thing discourage you. It's just a data point. If it makes you feel any better, science has now validated your birth mother's decision to abandon you on a doorstep. Oh, sorry. I'm still cleaning out the test chambers, so sometimes there's still trash in them, standing around, smelling and being useless. Remember before when I was talking about smelly garbage standing around being useless? That was a metaphor. I was actually talking about you.
Chell and Wheatley, the other little bot, manage to get into another boss fight with Glados, and successfully replaces her core with Wheatley, putting him in her body and thus putting him in control of the whole facility. And Wheatley, who was a nice little bot, promised to help Chell escape, becomes so consumed and corrupted with the power of the main system that he becomes the new villain. And Glados is put into a potato, and they end up teaming up. Together they travel through the long-abandoned parts of Aperture Science, and here Glados seems more like Caroline than ever. She's still sassy and hilarious, but being disconnected from the main system has made her seem more human. During this part of the game, we get to listen to these voice messages from Cave Johnson, and Glados starts recognizing him and even responding to him, but also recognizes the voice of Caroline.
Did anything happen while I was out?
The testing area is just up ahead. The quicker you get through, the quicker you'll get your $60.
Hold on.
Carolyn, are the compensation vouchers ready?
Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson. Why did I just... Who is that? What the hell is going on here? Carolyn, why do I know this woman? Did I kill her? Or... Oh my god. Look, you're doing a great job. Can you handle things for yourself for a while? I need to think.
And she eventually starts remembering her life as Caroline. In the end, she helps defeat Wheatley and gets her body and control over the facility back. In order to do this, they put a portal on the moon and suck Wheatley out to the moon, right into space. And Chell, the main protagonist, is about to be sucked out as well, but Glados saves her, going against everything she's tried to do in most of the games.
Oh, thank God, you're all right. You know, being Carolyn taught me a valuable lesson. I thought you were my greatest enemy, when all along you were my best friend. The surge of emotion that shot through me when I saved your life taught me an even more valuable lesson, where Carolyn lives in my brain.
Carolyn, deleted.
Goodbye, Carolyn.
After saving her, Glados expresses her gratitude and calls Chell her best friend. She also explains that she knows where Caroline lives in her brain, and then promptly deletes her. She lets Chell escape after this. And this is one hell of a story for a villain in a video game. And that's a huge reason about why I love Portal. They have such fantastic storytelling in quite a straightforward game. There's a lot of funky puzzles, there's a lot of visual storytelling going on everywhere. If we talk about just the map design, I'm not going to go into it, but there's story all over if you just look at the different levels and the different maps in this game. It's absolutely perfect. And the fact that GLaDOS changes so drastically as a character from the first game is so cool. So what does her story have to do with how she looks visually in the game and the design of her character? So now we come to my own interpretations. GLaDOS has 3 different designs in the Portal games. There's Portal 1 GLaDOS, Portal 2 GLaDOS, and Potato GLaDOS. I'd argue that there's 3.5 designs, because one of them is not really a design. It's in the beginning of the first game where you can't see her. So it's not really a design because she's not physically there. But the absence of her is a design choice in itself. Having a intentional vacancy of a body for this voice that's telling us to do things and becomes more human really makes the player confused in about the middle of the first Portal game. So I'd say that that's kind of one of her designs. It's not really because she's not there, but it is intentional that she's not there, so the main design associated with GLaDOS is the one from Portal 2. So that's the one I'm going to be discussing. I'm going to talk a little bit about Portal 1, but not too much. The reasoning being, Portal 1 and Portal 2 GLaDOS doesn't look that much different. It's the same reasoning for the design, it's the same storytelling in the design. They just decided to update it for Portal 2 because GLaDOS was going to have a bigger role. So it's a slightly different take of the same design. There is no lore reason for the change. It's just that GLaDOS was going to have a bigger part in Portal 2, as I just said, so they wanted to give her an updated look to go along with all of the updated visuals for the game. I, however, am going to pretend like there is a lore reason and give you a character design reason for why her design changed. Now, this is just me making stuff up and being able to explain a situation that has no real explanation for the purposes of storytelling, because I think it's fun to do. It's gonna make sense when I do it, I promise. Let's go over the main design without any analysis or weight into what this has to do with the storytelling. GLaDOS is huge. She's hanging upside down from the ceiling. The lights are pointing towards her. There's nothing else really in the room, so you're just forced to look straight at her. Most of her shapes are these half circles, likely to make her look more feminine. We often associate rounder shapes with femininity, don't ask me why, but it also makes sure that she can move and bend her body in the ways that she needs to. She has a lot of movement focus in her design. I think it would look odd if she couldn't move around as smoothly and easily as she does. She can bend in most directions, her head can move, her body can move, but her body can also spin on a platform attached to the ceiling. So she has the ability to observe you from any point in the room. Most of her machine body is exposed, revealing black and orange wires and other general machinery. Kind of like a machine skeleton. The wires come together like arms, and those machine stick things kind of look like neck muscles. Finally, all of the wiring and the machinery that has gone from her head to her shoulders to her torso all twist in to the legs that are attached to the ceiling. They resemble legs, or legs that are pushed together or tied together. On her chest and or back, it's both, since she bends in all directions really, she has this white metal plating that's been chipped away and started cracking. Her head's this half-circle rectangle with a hole in the plating for a smaller camera light that functions essentially as an eyeball. All of her shapes are very soft and fluid, and that allows for the smooth movements that she has, but also contrasts very nicely with the sharp metal plating and the little, I guess, more square and sharp machinery inside of her, like those little boxes she has on their arms. I'm not a tech person, I don't know what that is, but they contrast that smoothness of the half circle shapes and the softer, rounder shapes of the wires. The control room is where we first meet Glados for the first time. Here she is, hanging upside down, staring at us with one big eyeball camera thing. And the first impression we get of her is absolutely terrifying. She's massive and she has these wires wrapped around her like vines. All of the lights are pointing towards her, and the small spiral staircase leads your eye to her. No matter where you look in the room, it feels like you eventually end up on her. The room is designed, along with Glados, to demand your focus. Looking up at her makes you feel small and insignificant. She's looking down at you. Quite literally, she has to look down at you, but she's also looking down at you. Her design is also different from any other bot or turret design we've seen so far in the game. The turrets are small and smooth and very cute, while Glados is massive. And compared to them, her design seems messier and more chaotic, but also more human. The turrets also lack any human resemblance. They act in a way that makes us suspect that they may have a consciousness, but never that they may be human, compared to Glados. Glados to me feels like a walking, or I guess in this case hanging, contradiction, and her design feels like it too. Let me explain. She wants nothing more than to kill you, but she's the one who ends up saving you. She spends the beginning of Portal 2 insulting you, but when Wheatley does the same, she's the one who defends you. She's Caroline, a kind and loyal assistant, but also Glados, a cold and calculated machine whose only purpose is to test. She has all the knowledge in the world, but she doesn't even know her own past. She lets you go in the end, but not without your companion cube from the first game, because she doesn't want you to go alone. And all of this is what makes her a fantastic villain, and it's also visible in her design. Her design is in this weird middle place between a human and a machine. She's hanging upside down from the ceiling, which makes her look very scary and powerful. But the shape of her actual robot body resembles a human with their legs and their hands tied. And this is where that contradiction becomes an important part of her design. Glados is a godlike figure in Aperture that controls everything, even the humans that once built her. Yet there she is, hanging upside down without the ability to move herself. It looks uncomfortable, and despite the power that this form gives her, it's still restraining and something that might not have been her choice. And this design intentionally lets Glados' humanity be visible to the player. Now onto her face, or rather lack of a face. Her face is essentially one big security camera. A white box with a moving light inside that resembles an eyeball. It makes the player feel like she's always watching, which is true. She has been observing you throughout almost the entirety of Portal 1 and parts of Portal 2. The light functions as an eyeball, and it helps give the impression of expressions, even though she doesn't have a face. So if she's stressed out and the camera starts moving around, we can tell that, yeah, she's probably more stressed out now than she's ever been, because her camera's going bonkers in there. I think choosing to not give her a face with human facial expressions is a way to make her more robot-like. It's a way to distance her from that human side. I think if she had a more human-shaped body and a human-like face, it would have seemed too human. It wouldn't have put you in this uncomfortable middle state between machine and person, and it wouldn't have left as much of what she says up for interpretation, because there is no real expression to read. There's only the eyeball and the body movements, really. Successfully putting her right in the middle between human and machine is a fantastic choice, in my opinion. It makes you, as the player, question her a little bit. Is she more on your side as a human, or is she more on the machine side because she is a machine? Throughout all of Portal 2, when she's on your side, you question her motivations, even though she spent some time in a potato. I'm not sure how much thought was put into the color of her eyeball, but I think it was smart not to pick a color normally associated with good or evil, like blue, green, or red. Glados isn't really good or evil. Well, I mean, she's definitely evil. She's killed a bunch of people, but not always. She is... I would describe her more as a villainous character with very questionable actions, but definitely one that can change. So, giving her, first of all, a pop of color that is different from most of her black and white design, and choosing a color that's warm too, maybe gives her some warmth and allowing us to see some of that humanity peeping through a mechanic shell. Also, for being a super intelligent AI, she has no real way to protect herself if the turrets and neurotoxin don't work. Glados is very smart but shows great hubris throughout both games. A character that believes they can't get hurt won't have the need to physically defend themselves. Even though Glados clearly could have built herself like a cool mech body or given herself guns and armor, she doesn't. Once again, a way to show her character. She is too cocky to do that. She knows she's too smart to die. She doesn't think she can die. Because you're just a tiny human and she's a powerful god compared to you. So of course she wouldn't defend herself. She wouldn't change the form she was given when she became Glados because she doesn't need to. She maybe should have because she gets killed. But giving her a design that doesn't show the fact that she's so incredibly cocky wouldn't have worked for her. Her design is literally, I could fight you with my hands tied behind my back. And it's a wonderful way to show how she views herself as well. So you have this combo of a body that seems human and a face that doesn't. She's covered in this white plating, and this is what I'm gonna completely make up a reason for why the designs change between Portal 1 and Portal 2. But I'm gonna have kind of maybe interesting motivation for it. We know that Glados got blown up and destroyed in the end of Portal 1. Chell got dragged back in the facility by a turret, so we can assume that the same thing could have happened to Glados. We see her head laying in front of Chell. She could have been repaired, or at least partially repaired, by the other turrets and bots without being activated herself. That could explain that she visually has changed. The biggest difference between Portal 1 and Portal 2 is the face and the amount of white plating. It wouldn't be weird to assume that a bunch of the plating and metal that held Glados together would have fallen off in the explosion. In Portal 2, Glados is more bare, showing more of that machinery and wiring underneath the surface. This doesn't only show that time has passed and she's been hurt, but also that she's dropped this facade. She doesn't need to pretend and lie to you anymore. She knows that you know that she wants to kill you. Yeah, she's more vulnerable now too, knowing that she's not immortal. The white plating could act as this fake facade to trick you, but also to protect herself. And now that's gone. It exaggerates her shape language, making her pose look even more strained and uncomfortable. She looks less inviting and way messier. Then we have my second favorite version of her design, Potato Glados. Not only is it absolutely hilarious, but it serves a couple of visual and storytelling purposes. One is to be able to follow Chell around the facility. Since she's small, she can do that. It's a way to make Glados depend on Chell in order for her to grow as a character and find out more about her own past. Adding Glados into an organic form is also interesting, because I think if she had stayed in her main body without being in control of the facility, even if she could move around and follow maybe on a railing or something. Rail? I don't know. Maybe she would be able to move kind of like a shower curtain, I guess, around the facility. She would have looked too powerful, it would have been hard to sympathize with her, and it wouldn't have had the same effect. If she would have been in something else, like a turret or something mechanic, it would have been funny, but I think that would have defeated the purpose. I think that it wouldn't have been as humiliating for Glados than it is if you put her into a potato. An organic being that can do nothing. She's now in something that is technically alive. Well, I guess more alive than she was before, which is something she's held disdain for. We can see her grow as a character, pun intended, in this potato form. It's also really cute the way they decided to keep her main feature, her yellow eyeball, in the potato. They could have just given a potato and said this is GLaDOS, but in order to communicate that this actually is GLaDOS in a potato and not just a potato, she has a little tiny yellow eyeball and some wiring, making her still recognizable in another form. GLaDOS has a very visual character development as well. It's not only that she changes as a character inside, she changes physically along with her designs. First, we don't see her at all, making us write her off as nothing but a guide, an automated voice written to be funny. But this voice seems to get more and more human, and we start getting a bit confused and going, what? What's going on here? Not showing her and not giving this voice a body or a source in the beginning other than a speaker is really clever, because we cannot point and say, oh, that's where it's coming from. It's a machine. That thing can talk to me. We can assume it's an automated message. We can assume that it's someone talking to us. It could be a human talking to us, having a weird voice changer. We don't know. Then we see her for the first time, and she's not a person, but a massive machine observing you. Her sleek design matches the rest of the modern testing chambers we've been in, but not really. She stands out, but it's clear that she's made with the same tech we've seen before. In the beginning of Portal 2, she's different. She's changed. A lot of her shiny plating has fallen off, and what's left has been chipped away and dirtied up. She's come back from the dead, a scorned woman, and she's out for revenge, something you can tell by just looking at her. After being stripped of her power by Wheatley and put in a potato, she's the most vulnerable she's ever been. She has no access to the mainframe anymore or to the facility, and she's forced to depend on you for everything. For saving her, for moving her, for finishing the chambers, and she can't even help. There's nothing she can do. The only thing she can do is listen. And that's intentional. If she was able to do anything else, if she was a turret with legs, she could have ran away from these situations she's forced to be put in. And when she's finally back in her own body and has control over the facility again, this growth shows, and then is immediately deleted. Even if Caroline is deleted, she still ends up letting Chell go, which is a decision that GLaDOS would have never made in Portal 1. So she has grown as a character, but when she's back in her normal robot body, she becomes more calculated immediately. If she would have remained a potato in control of the facility, I don't believe she would have deleted Caroline. I think showing that she's reverting back to some of her old ways, but not all, by reuniting her to her original body, is a great visual way to show that she's grown, but she's not good. She's almost good. So that's what I think about her character design, what I interpret from it. It's not necessarily the only way to interpret it or the absolute correct way to interpret it. But when I look at her character, knowing her story, this is what it tells me. Here are some things that I found out from the actual, people who created the game and the characters and artists and all of that. So GLaDOS wasn't supposed to be in the game originally. During playtesting, the feedback they got back was essentially, love the game mechanic, guys. We don't really know where to go most of the time or how to solve a lot of these puzzles. So they wanted to add in a sort of guide, and they settled on an antagonistic guide, which is the first purpose GLaDOS serves. It was a way to push the narrative to give the player a goal, defeating a villain, but also to help them through the testing chambers and the puzzles. During the design process, designing humans for the game became an issue. It takes way too much time to come up with concepts for humans because they all look so vastly different, and then make models of them and then design them and add in the movement. So that was just something that they couldn't really do at the time of Portal 1, which really benefited the game in the long run. I think if it would have had humans or any other scientists, that would have made the game not really what it is today. And I prefer what it is today. And you can assume that this issue led the designs to be more focused towards robotic options, or options like the beginning of the game where she doesn't have a body. In the beginning of the game, there was supposed to be a couple of messages of dialogue played, and Eric Wolpaw, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm so sorry if I'm not, one of the creators made a sample using text-to-speech. And the design team liked it so much that this text-to-speech was used for many of the other chambers. And this set the tone for who Glados was supposed to become. To the actual visual design of Glados, there's a bunch of super cool concept art. In some early explorations of her character, she looks like a big eyeball or a floating brain or a spider, and they apparently made a version where she was just a cube. The most important rule for creating GLaDOS, though, was to not make her seem like a computer, something reflected in her dialogue but also in her visual design. It was very important to them that it wasn't a version of an AI that lacked any sense of being human. I think in the Wikipedia they gave an example where they said they didn't want her to say stuff like, "Oh my bolts," instead of "Oh my god," because that would have made her too computer robot-like. They took inspiration from Sandra Bocelli's, once again I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, painting The Birth of Venus. And I had no idea about this, and I got so excited when I found out. Well, it was The Birth of Venus upside down that they got a lot of their visual inspiration from, where GLaDOS would be Venus in the case, and all of the other characters and people would be her personality cores, because they wanted this mix of machine and femininity. I wasn't able to find any more about how they visually designed GLaDOS. There is more about how they did their level design or how they created other aspects of the game, but I wasn't able to find anything more about specifically GLaDOS. It could be because it's an older game where it's not as well documented, this sort of process of the concept art and the thoughts about the concept art to the finished product and all of that. It could also be that I've missed stuff in my research. Since this is the first video essay I make like this, and I make it on a character from an older game, the research is a little bit harder to do. So if you have an interview or something like that, or you know something about the process of designing specifically GLaDOS that I've missed, I would love to hear it in the comments. I think GLaDOS is an amazing multifaceted character with an interest in murder, something her design does a fantastic job at expressing. Even if you don't have a huge interest in character design, I think it's important to remember the effort that everyone goes through to make a character come to life. And they put effort into every single part of the design, every little detail. And it's all intentional. It's important to communicate who this character is and who this character isn't in their design. This video is mostly my own interpretations of why she looks the way she does, in order to learn more about character design, but also to experience Portal again. I miss it, I want to play it for the first time again, please and thank you. So I really hope you liked this video. I've never made a video essay style video before, so, you know, like I hope it was fine. I tried to make it a bit funnier, but I get really into talking about stuff like this, and when I write, I'm not funny. If you have any thoughts on GLaDOS' character design, just yourself or something that I didn't think of, or information, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Also, feel free to give me suggestions for other characters to do this for, if you'd like to see that kind of video. Once again, the sources are gonna be in the bio. I'm gonna link some video essays that I really like that I think you should check out as well. You can always catch me on my Twitch if you want to see me live. I don't really do this type of stuff on my Twitch. I do talk a lot about character design, but I play a lot of video games there, and I do a lot of art myself. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to follow if you want to. Bye!